Tyrion. They had taken shelter beneath a copse of aspens just off the high road. Tyrion was gathering deadwood while their horses took water from a mountain stream. He stooped to pick up a splintered branch and examined it critically. "Will this do? I'm not practiced at starting fires. Morrick did that for me." "A fire?" Bronn said, spitting. "Are you so hungry to die, dwarf? Or have you taken leave of your senses? A fire will bring the clansmen down for miles round. I mean to survive this journey, Lannister." "And how do you hope to do that?" Tyrion asked. He tucked the branch under his arm and poked round through the sparse undergrowth, looking for more. His back ached from the effort of bending. They'd been riding since daybreak, when a stone-faced Sir Lyn Corbray had ushered them through the bloody gate and commanded them never to return. "We've no chance of fighting our way back," Bronn said, "but 2 can cover more ground than 10 and attract less notice. The fewer days we spend in these mountains, the more likely we are to reach the Riverlands. Ride hard and fast, I say. Travel by night and hole up by day. Avoid the road when we can. Make no noise, and light no fires." Tyrion Lannister sighed. "A splendid plan, Bronn. Try it, as you like, and forgive me if I do not linger to bury you." "You think to outlive me, dwarf?" The sellsword grinned. He had a dark gap in his smile where the edge of Sir Vardis Egan's shield had cracked a tooth in half. Tyrion shrugged. "Riding hard and fast by night is a sure way to tumble down a mountain and crack your skull. I prefer to make my crossings slow and easy. I know you love the taste of horse, Bronn, but if our mounts die under us this time, we'll be trying to saddle Shadowcats. And if truth be told, I think the clans will find us no matter what we do. Their eyes are all around us." He swept a gloved hand over the high, wind-carved crags that surrounded them. Bronn grimaced. "Then we're dead men, Lannister." "If so, I prefer to die comfortable," Tyrion replied. "We need a fire. The nights are cold up here, and hot food will warm our bellies and lift our spirits. Do you suppose there's any game to be had? Lady Lysa has kindly provided us with a veritable feast of salt beef, hard cheese, and stale bread, but I would hate to break a tooth so far from the nearest maester." "I can find meat." Beneath a fall of black hair, Bronn's dark eyes regarded Tyrion suspiciously. "I should leave you here with your fool's fire. If I took your horse, I'd have twice the chance to make it through. What would you do then, dwarf?" "Die, most like." Tyrion stooped to get another stick. "You don't think I'd do it?" "You'd do it in an instant if it meant your life. You were quick enough to silence your friend Chiggin when he caught that arrow in his belly." Bronn had yanked back the man's head by the hair and driven the point of his dirk under the ear, and afterward told Catelyn Stark that the other sellsword had died of his wound. "He was as good as dead," Bronn said, "and his moaning was bringing them down on us. Chiggin would have done the same for me, and he was no friend, only a man I rode with. Make no mistake, dwarf, I fought for you, but I don't love you." "It was your blade I needed," Tyrion said, "not your love." He dumped his armful of wood on the ground. Bronn grinned. "You're as bold as any sellsword, I'll give you that. How do you know I'd take your part?" "No." Tyrion squatted awkwardly on his stunted legs to build the fire. "I tossed the dice. Back at the inn, you and Chiggin helped take me captive. Why? The others saw it as their duty, for the honor of the lords they served. But not you two. You had no lord, no duty, and precious little honor, so why trouble to involve yourselves?" He took out his knife and whittled some thin strips of bark off one of the sticks he'd gathered to serve as kindling. "Well, why do sellswords do anything? For gold. You were thinking Lady Catelyn would reward you for your help, perhaps even take you into her service. Here, that should do, I hope. Do you have a flint?" Bronn slid 2 fingers into the pouch at his belt and tossed down a flint. Tyrion caught it in the air. "My thanks," he said. "The thing is, you did not know the Starks. Lord Eddard is proud, honourable, and an honest man, and his lady wife is worse. Oh, no doubt she would have found a coin or 2 for you when this was all over and pressed it into your hand with a polite word and a look of distaste, but that's the most you would have hoped for. The Starks look for courage and loyalty and honour in the men they choose to serve them, and if truth be told, You and Chicken were low-born scum. Tyrion struck the flint against his dagger, trying for a spark. Nothing. Bronn snorted. You've a bold tongue, little man. One day someone is like to cut it out and make you eat it. Everyone tells me that. Tyrion glanced up at the sellsword. Did I offend you? My pardons. But you are scum, Bronn. Make no mistake. Duty, honor, friendship. What's that to you? No, don't trouble yourself. We both know the answer. Still, you're not stupid. Once we've reached the Vale, Lady Stark had no more need of you. But I did. And the one thing Lannisters have never lacked for is gold. When the moment came to toss the dice, I was counting on you being smart enough to know where your best interests lie. Happily for me, you did. He slammed stone and steel together again, fruitlessly. Here, Bronn said, squatting. I'll do it. He took the knife and flint from Tyrion's hands and struck sparks on his first try. A curl of bark began to smoulder. Well done, Tyrion said. Scum you may be, but you're undeniably useful, and with a sword in your hand, you're almost as good as my brother Jaime. What do you want, Bronn? Gold? Land? Women? Keep me alive, and you'll have it. Bronn blew gently on the fire, and the flames leapt up higher. And if you die? Why, then I'll have another mourner whose grief is sincere, Tyrion said, grinning. The gold ends when I do. The fire was blazing up nicely. Bronn stood, tucked the flint back into his pouch, and tossed Tyrion his dagger. Fair enough, he said. My sword's yours, then. But don't go looking for me to bend the knee and milord you every time you take a shit. I'm no man's toady. Nor any man's friend, Tyrion said. I've no doubt you'd betray me as quick as you did Lady Stark if you saw a profit in it. If the day ever comes when you're tempted to sell me out, remember this, Bronn. I'll match that price, whatever it is. I like living. And now, do you think you could do something about finding us some supper? Take care of the horses, Bronn said, unsheathing the longsword he wore at his hip. He strode into the trees. An hour later the horses had been rubbed down and fed, the fire was crackling away merrily, and the haunch of a young goat was turning merrily above the flames, spitting and hissing. All we lack now is some good wine to wash down our kid, Tyrion said. That, a woman, and another dozen swords, Bronn said. He sat cross-legged beside the fire, honing the edge of his longsword with an oilstone. There was something strangely reassuring about the rasping sound it made when he drew it down the steel. It'll be full dark soon, the sellsword pointed out. I'll take first watch, for all the good it'll do us. Might be kinder to let them kill us in our sleep. Oh, I imagine they'll be here long before it comes to sleep. The smell of the roasting meat made Tyrion's mouth water. Bronn watched him cross the fire. You have a plan, he said flatly, with a scrape of steel on stone. A hope, call it, Tyrion said, and another toss of the dice. With our lives as a stake? Tyrion shrugged. What choice do we have? He leaned over the fire and sawed a thin slice of meat from the kid. Ah, he sighed happily as he chewed. Grease ran down his chin. A bit tougher than I'd like, and in want of spicing, but I won't complain too loudly. If I were back at the Eyrie, I'd be dancing on a precipice in hopes of a boiled bean. And yet you gave the turnkey a purse of gold, Bronn said. A Lannister always pays his debts. Even Maud had scarcely believed it when Tyrion had tossed him the leather purse. The gaoler's eyes had gone as big as boiled eggs as he yanked open the drawstring and beheld the glint of gold. I kept the silver, Tyrion had told him with a crooked smile. But you were promised the gold, and there it is. It was more than a man like Maud could hope to earn in a lifetime of abusing prisoners. And remember what I said, this is only a taste. If you ever grow tired of Lady Erin's service, present yourself at Casterly Rock, and I'll pay you the rest of what I owe you. With golden dragons spilling out of both hands, Maud had fallen to his knees and promised that he would do just that. Bronn yanked out his dirk and pulled the meat from the fire. He began to carve thick chunks of charred meat off the bone as Tyrion hollowed out 2 heels of stale bread to serve as trenchers. If we do reach the river, what will you do then? The sellsword asked as he cut. Oh, a whore and a feather bed and a flagon of wine for a start. Tyrion held out his trencher and Bronn filled it with meat. And then to Casterly Rock or King's Landing, I think. I have some questions that want answering concerning a certain dagger. The sellsword chewed and swallowed. So you were telling it true. It weren't your knife. Tyrion smiled thinly. Do I look like a liar to you? By the time their bellies were full, the stars had come out and a half-moon was rising over the mountains. Tyrion spread his shadow-skin cloak on the ground and stretched out with his saddle for a pillow. Our friends are taking their sweet time. If I were them, I'd fear a trap, Bronn said. Why else would we be so open if not to lure 'em in? Tyrion chuckled. Then we ought to sing and send them fleeing in terror. He began to whistle a tune. You're mad, dwarf, Bronn said as he cleaned the grease out from under his nails with his dirk. Where's your love of music, Bronn? If it was music you wanted, you should have got the singer to champion for you. Tyrion grinned. That would have been very amusing. I can just see him fending off Sir Vardis with his wood harp. He resumed his whistling. Do you know this song? He asked. You hear it here and there in inns and whorehouses. Murish, the seasons of my love. Sweet and sad, if you understand the words. The first girl I ever bedded used to sing it, and I've never been able to put it out of my head. Tyrion gazed up at the sky. It was a clear, cold night, and the stars shone through upon the mountains, as bright and merciless as truth. I met her on a night like this, he heard himself saying. Jaime and I were riding back from Lannisport when we heard a scream, and she came running out into the road with 2 men dogging her heels, shouting threats. My brother unsheathed his sword and went after them while I dismounted to protect the girl. She was scarcely a year older than I was, dark-haired, slender, with a face that would break your heart. It certainly broke mine. Low-born, half-starved, unwashed, yet lovely. They'd torn the rags she was wearing half off her back, so I wrapped her in my cloak while Jaime chased the men into the woods. By the time he came trotting back, I'd gotten a name out of her, and a story. She was a crofter's child, orphan when her father died of fever, on her way to, well, nowhere really. Jaime was all in a lather to hunt down the men. It was not so often outlaws dared prey on travellers so near Casterly Rock, and he took it as an insult. The girl was too frightened to send off by herself, though, so I offered to take her to the closest inn and feed her while my brother rode back to the rock for help. She was hungrier than I would have believed. We finished 2 whole chickens and part of a third, and drank a flagon of wine, talking. I was only 16, and the wine went to my head, I fear. The next thing I knew, I was sharing her bed. If she was shy, I was shyer. I'll never know where I found the courage. When I broke her maidenhead, she wept, but afterwards she kissed me and sang her little song, and by morning I was in love. You? Bronn's voice was amused. Absurd, isn't it? Tyrion began to whistle the song again. I married her, he finally admitted. A Lannister of Casterly Rock wed to a crofter's daughter, Bronn said. How'd you manage that? Oh, you'd be astonished at what a boy can make of a few lies, 50 pieces of silver, and a drunken septon. I dared not bring my bride home to Casterly Rock, so I set her up in a cottage of her own, and for a fortnight we played at being man and wife. And then later the septon sobered and confessed all to my lord father. Tyrion was surprised at how desolate it made him feel to say it, even after all these years. Perhaps he was just tired. That was the end of my marriage. He sat up and stared at the drying fire, blinking at the light. He sent the girl away? He did better than that, Tyrion said. First he made my brother tell me the truth. The girl was a whore, you see. Jaime arranged the whole affair. The road, the outlaws, all of it. He thought it was time I had a woman. He paid double for a maiden, knowing it would be my first time. After Jaime made his confession, to drive home the lesson, Lord Tywin brought my wife in and gave her to his guards. They paid her fair enough. A silver for each man. How many whores command that higher price? He sat me down in the corner of the barracks and bade me watch, and at the end she had so many silvers the coins were slipping through her fingers and rolling on the floor. The smoke was stinging his eyes. Tyrion cleared his throat and turned away from the fire to gaze out into darkness. Lord Tywin had me go last, he said in a quiet voice, and he gave me a gold coin to pay her, because I was a Lannister, and worth more. After a time he heard the noise again, the rasp of steel on stone as Bronn sharpened his sword. 13, a 30, a 3. I would have killed the man who did that to me. Tyrion swung round to face him. You may get that chance one day. Remember what I told you. A Lannister always pays his debts. He yawned. I think I will try to sleep. Wake me if we are about to die. He rolled himself up in the shadow skin and shut his eyes. The ground was stony and cold, but after a time Tyrion Lannister did sleep. He dreamt of the Sky Cell. This time he was the gaoler, not the prisoner. Big, with a strap in his hand, and he was hitting his father, driving him back, toward the abyss. Tyrion? Bronn's warning was low and urgent. Tyrion was awake in the blink of an eye. The fire had burned down to embers, and the shadows were creeping in all round him. Bronn had raised himself to one knee, his sword in one hand and his dirk in the other. Tyrion held up a hand. Stay still, it said. Come share our fire, the night is cold, he called out to the creeping shadows. I fear we've no wine to offer you, but you're welcome to some of our goat. All movement stopped. Tyrion saw the glint of moonlight on metal. Our mountain, a voice called from the trees, deep and hard and unfriendly. Our goat! Your goat, Tyrion agreed. Who are you? When you meet your gods, a different voice replied, say it was Gunther, son of Gurn of the Stone Crows, who sent you to him. A branch cracked underfoot as he stepped into the light. A thin man in a horned helmet, armed with a long knife. And Shagga, son of Dolf. That was the first voice, deep and deadly. A boulder shifted to their left and stood and became a man. Massive and slow and strong he seemed, dressed all in skins, with a club in his right hand and an axe on his left. He smashed them together as he lumbered closer. Other voices called other names. Con and Torek and Jaggat, and more that Tyrion forgot the instant he heard them. 10 at least. A few had swords and knives, others brandished pitchforks and scythes and wooden spears. He waited until they were all done shouting out their names until he gave them an answer. I am Tyrion, son of Tywin of the clan Lannister, the Lions of the Rock. We will gladly pay you for the goat we ate. What do you have to give us, Tyrion, son of Tywin? Asked the one who named himself Gunther, who seemed to be their chief. There is silver in my purse, Tyrion told them. This hauberk I wear is large for me, but it could fit Con nicely, and the battle-axe I carry would suit Shagga's mighty hand far better than the wood-axe he holds. The half-man would pay us with our own coin, said Con. Con speaks truly, Gunther said. Your silver is ours, your horses are ours, your hauberk and your battle-axe and the knife at your belt, those are ours too. You have nothing to give us but your lives. How would you like to die, Tyrion, son of Tywin? In my own bed with a bellyful of wine and a maiden's mouth round my cock at the edge of 80, he replied. The huge one, Shagga, laughed first and loudest. The others seemed less amused. Can't take the horses, Gunther commanded. Kill the other and seize the half-man. He can milk the goats and make the mothers laugh. Bronn sprang to his feet. Who dies first? No, Tyrion said sharply. Gunther, son of Gurn, hear me. My house is rich and powerful. If the storm crows will see us safely through these mountains, my lord father will shower you with gold. The gold of a lowland lord is as worthless as a half-man's promises, Gunther said. Half a man I may be, Tyrion said, yet I have the courage to face my enemies. What do the storm crows do but hide behind rocks and shiver with fear as the knights of the Vale ride by? Shagga gave a roar of anger and clashed club against axe. Jaggat poked at Tyrion's face with the fire-hardened point of a long wooden spear. He did his best not to flinch. Are these the best weapons you could steal? He said. Good enough for killing sheep, perhaps, if the sheep did not fight back. My father's smith's shit better steal. Little boy man, Shagga roared. Will you mock my axe after I chop off your manhood and feed it to the goats? But Gunther raised a hand. Nah, I would hear his words. The mothers go hungry and steel fills more mouths than gold. What would you give us for your lives, Tyrion, son of Tywin? Swords, lances, mail? All that and more, Gunther, son of Gurn, Tyrion Lannister replied, smiling. I will give you the Vale of Arryn.
The Vale of Arryn, that's a lot to live up to. Can he keep that promise? Can he pay that debt? I guess is how I should put it.
That's a pretty tall order.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot to offer.
How's he gonna do it?
That's a very good question.
Or will he not? Is he just talking out his ass?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
We'll say whatever it takes to keep me alive.
I feel like he might be talking out of his butt a little bit on this one.
Yeah, I think so too. Here, let's blind you with the promise of steel and coin, and then when we get back to my father, my Lannister guards will kill you all.
The same Lannister guards that all had a turn with my wife.
Yes. Well, it's kind of a fake marriage, but still. Tyrion, but she was his wife.
Yeah. That was a terrible story.
It was. Jaime had a good idea, but it didn't work out how you wanted it to. It's like Jaime was trying. He had the good intentions.
He did. I think Jaime had good intentions and in his way was trying to do something nice for his brother.
Exactly.
And it backfired in the worst possible way that it could have backfired.
Yeah.
That being said, I think Tywin may have overreacted a little bit.
Just a little bit.
That was a bit of an overreaction.
Yeah, that's... Yeah.
Now we know more about Tyrion's relationship with his father.
Yeah, and we kind of understand more why Tyrion has this vendetta against him. Why he was sitting in the crypts of Casterly Rock pretending to kill his sister and father.
Yep.
Well, at least the father part we know now. Sister, we don't know yet. Who knows?
Well, we know very much that Cersei and Tyrion do not have a very good relationship with each other.
No, they don't.
So not only in this chapter did we get this dream, or this story about this girl, this thing that happened to Tyrion, but then he also has a dream where he's moored and he's beating his father.
So Tyrion, he had a messed up childhood.
Yeah, Papa Tywin is kind of rude.
Papa Lion is fierce.
Papa Lion is feisty.
Yeah, that was pretty much the chapter. We just kind of learned about Tyrion's past.
Yeah. And
I love how...
More and more little tidbits about Tywin, a character who we haven't met yet, but we have heard a lot of other characters have brought him up, and he has this very formidable kind of reputation for being Ned thinks not very highly of him at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because of his...
He's formidable, but not very honorable.
Yeah, he thinks the way that he acted during Robert's Rebellion was not honorable.
Not at all. He was just sitting back and waiting to see who the victor was gonna be, and then swooped in and said, "Yeah, I was on your side, guys."
Listen, I totally get Tywin's stance on that. I totally understand it. Not saying I support it, but I get it. We don't have to get into it right now, because...
Yeah, we got
There's
plenty more material to get through before we can have a educated discussion on that.
right. I'm just
But
saying.
I think this was the most Tyrion of Tyrion chapters.
Yeah,
There was a lot of just witty banter and
I know.
sassiness.
How would
It
you
was
like
great.
to die?
I know.
I also.
And how he kind of read Braun like a book.
He really did read Braun like a book. And I think, despite the fact that Braun is like, well, I'm not your friend, man. I don't like you.
I'm not your buddy guy.
I just like your purse. And, but I think Braun is kind of like warming to Tyrion a little bit.
Yeah.
And like, Braun is this guy who doesn't really have any honor or any, he's very much in it for the money and this and that. And then Tyrion tells that story and Braun is like, yo, I would kill the dude that did that to me. He like commiserates with him and stuff, and I don't know.
And then Tyrion, you might just get that chance.
Yeah, I know, right? What does is Tyrion?
His plan? Is he gonna bring Braun back and unleash Braun upon his father?
Avon Papa Lion?
Mm-hmm. Papa Lannister.
Papa Lannister. That's just who he is in my head now.
Papa Lanny.
No, not that. I don't like that.
Papa Lanny.
No, I don't like that. Yeah, he seems very much be like just open about like, oh yeah, I think I want to kill my dad.
Mm-hmm. You want to help me with that, maybe? Mm-hmm.
I think Tyrion has some anger issues.
Yeah.
I think Tyrion has some major anger issues, which we haven't really seen up until this point. This is kind of like we get a little insight into his darker nature.
Mm-hmm.
Because those are some kind of like dark thoughts, but you're also given kind of an explanation of why he's having these dark
I
thoughts.
think we've had glimpses of these dark thoughts before. This is when he kind of opens up and we know where these dark thoughts originate from.
Right.
Way back in his childhood from his first love.
The low-born girl.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie, what'd you do, man? It's all your fault, bud.
You messed up, Jamie. You messed up.
Cersei, I've made a terrible mistake. Now that Tyrion seems to have things under control with the clansmen in the mountains, we're gonna go back to King's Landing to see how Eddard is doing with his busted leg.
And his Hand of the King badge that he can never take off again.
My leg!